Welcome to the first video in the New Year, New Job series. And in this video, we're going to talk about creating your resume. Now, your resume is a key document that is part of your job application, and it's likely going to be the very first impression a hiring manager will have of you. So you want to make sure to make a good impression and get it right. Now, truth be told, your resume is likely to be just one in the pile of potentially hundreds of applications. And now the hiring manager has to go through each of these applications individually. So you want to make sure that your resume is very clean, easy to read, stands out from the pile, and gives a very good impression of who you are and what you like to work with as a designer. Let's start with talking a little bit about cover letters. I often get asked from design students whether they should include a cover letter or not in their application. Now, to be honest, I'm more in favor of the nice email introduction approach. An email is essentially a cover letter that leads us into your resume. Sometimes there's also cases where there is only the ability to submit one document. Maybe your cover letter is a separate document and so you have two. That can get really messy and hard to manage. So if you do a cover letter, I recommend including it in the document of your resume. That way it's just one document, one application, and things don't get lost and they stay neatly together. Another approach which I'm seeing more of and I actually quite like is a little introduction or a little blurb about yourself at the top of your resume. And I'll show you some examples of these later that I think have been done really well. This kind of is a nice little introduction and lead into your resume. Now, there are a few key things to include on your resume. The first is obviously your name and contact details. Now, if applicable, you might also want to include your location here. Maybe you're applying for a role overseas, or for some reason, location might be important, so consider including that also. Within your contact details, it goes without saying, have your email address, have your phone number, and potentially a website or a link to a LinkedIn if that's something that you have available, which I recommend you should. The next is obviously your experience and your work history, and we're going to dive into that in a second to talk about what exactly you should include there. Third is any education you have if applicable. This could be degrees, diplomas, boot camps, grad school certificates, anything that kind of helps speak to you being qualified as a designer. Now, optionally, there are a few additional things you could also include. The first being any side projects you have. Side projects really speak to your motivation and your ambition and passion towards design. So if you have a side project here that you think is worth mentioning and that you're proud of, then definitely include it. I personally include my podcast and my YouTube channel as side projects in my resume. If you have any additional skills that are complementary to design, then make sure to include them also. Maybe you've done some public speaking or some event management or organized workshops, things like that. You could also include these in your resume also, as they help show that you have a little bit of extra strength and skills to give. Mentioning any side projects and additional skills shows not only motivation, but also ambition and initiative. So I really recommend including these in your resume if you have them. Don't lie, obviously, and pretend you have a side project you don't have. Let's jump into the experience and work history part of your resume, because obviously this is the key part that hiring managers are going to be looking at to get an impression of your experience and skills. Key things to include for each job that you've had. The company. Who were you working for? Second is the time frame or the dates. When were you working for this company? Now, I personally think it's fine to just include the month and the year. You don't need to be super specific and mention exact dates. It's not super important. Next is the role title. What was your job there? And if you had a promotion, make sure you include that too. I personally like to see growth in resumes, so if you started at a company as a junior designer and made it to senior, then split those out and have junior and senior as two little paragraphs within that company experience. Next, you want to give a little brief summary of your responsibilities. What were you responsible for at the company, and what kind of skills or tasks did your role require you to fulfill? The summary of responsibilities really helps give context to your role. Here, I recommend listing any major accomplishments, any projects that you might have led there, and any extra skills that you might have developed during your time in this role. Then you want to repeat this for basically every job. Now, keep it relevant, right? I don't need to know that you worked at a movie theater when you were 15 years old. only list kind of the most recent and relevant jobs related to the role that you're applying for. Now, let's talk about some general tips when it comes to designing your resume. The first piece of advice I have is to keep it to one page, please. As someone that has had to go through literally hundreds of resumes in one sitting, if yours is more than one page, I am likely not going to get to the second page. One page also makes it really easy to digest. It's really skimmable. It keeps it clean, tidy, and neat. If you have more content that you feel you need 2 pages, then I recommend condensing and cutting things out. Another practical tip that a lot of people don't put the effort into, it seems, is to actually name your resume document well. I'm going through a lot of applications. I can easily lose your resume if it's just titled My Resume or CV2 or Resume Version B. I often have a folder with all the applicants' resumes in it, and if yours isn't titled with your name, I'm probably going to lose it and it's going to be really hard to find. I recommend, honestly, just naming your resume file as your first and last name dash resume. That keeps it super clean and super simple. Last tip is to, if you can, make your resume an interactive PDF. Now, I do recommend on your resume linking out to your LinkedIn or your website if you have those. So what you can do actually, if you use InDesign to create your resume, you can actually turn these into interactive links. So when you export your resume, you export it as an interactive PDF. And that way I can actually click on your website in the document and that will open it up for me in my browser, which is really nice, really easy. I don't have to copy and paste it into my web browser. It just opens up the links. This is going to save me time because often the next step from looking at your resume will be me wanting to look at your portfolio. So if that's just a click away, makes my job easier. Okay, so I wanted to share just a couple of examples of design resumes that I think inherit all the principles I've talked about so far in this video and are really clean, neat, tidy, and just generally easy to digest. The first is from product designer Christine Rode. Now, Christine actually has her resume as a page on her website, and I really like this because it makes it very easily shareable. I can just copy and send this link to a colleague or a team member of mine if I also want them to review her application. Now, Christine lists a location for each role she has had, which helps give me a little bit of context about her work history. In this case, I actually noticed that she's worked in 4 different countries, which is really impressive. That's kind of a good sign to me because it shows that she probably has a lot of global worldly experience that she might be able to bring to the team. She has a summary here that's kind of like a very brief cover letter where it just introduces herself. This is really nice, clean, tidy, easy to read, and you can't miss it. She also has a way to contact her. The next resume is from Jua. Now, Jua is still a design student, so this is a great example of a resume that, maybe doesn't have a lot of real world full-time job experience, but she has some interesting side projects and initiatives, and she also has some internships that she can speak to. So Jua clearly has her contact details and location at the top of her resume, followed by a really brief intro summary. Again, I really like these. She has a very easy to read list of her work experience. Then she lists her education and skills at the bottom. What I really like about this resume is that it's clean, there's no fluff, and it's very easy to read. That's my best advice I have for creating your design resume. Now remember, please keep it to one page and keep it clear and concise. The hiring manager will thank you. And also, this is your time to shine, so put in your best effort, make a good impression, and stand out from the crowd. The next video in this series is all about preparing your portfolio. I'll see you over there in that video.